Hello and welcome to Friday Live. I am your host, Strata lawyer Amanda Farmer. We're going out live this Friday to the Your Strata Property Facebook page. We're heading out to LinkedIn. We're heading out to YouTube. How are you all this week? How has your Strata life been? That is what we're here to catch up on this Friday. I'm going to be with you probably for the next hour, chilling, relaxing, recuperating from another busy week in Strata, sharing the Strata news with you, sharing some information, some guidance, some education, if I can, to help smooth your experience of Strata. Always love being here with you on a Friday. Many of you coming in live and already saying hi to me. I'll head over to those comments very soon. If you're catching the replay, don't forget, always drop me a hello. I do see those come through after the event. Some of you might not be here because you're attending a Strata meeting. Have you all seen that post on the page from the other evening? I was asking you, how many Strata meetings have you attended this year? And so many of you played along and responded to that post. We've got anywhere from 0, because you tell me that your communities do not have meetings, to 45. I think the winner so far is Daryl at 45 Strata meetings that he has attended this year. It's only June. Can I just remind you of that? It's only June, so a couple of meetings a week for Daryl, and he estimates that he'll probably crack the 100 in 2024. Wow, that is a busy Strata manager. But just going through and reading those comments and hearing why some of you, a couple of managers in there, are attending so many meetings, why some of you are not attending meetings, why you're saying that your communities, your committees are not holding meetings. Very interesting conversation happening under that post. So if you haven't chimed in on that one, please do let me know, how many Strata meetings have you attended this year? Hey, Anna. Anna's telling me, hi, Amanda, I finally made it back. Welcome back, Anna. Hey, Sean M. Good to see you. Hey, Sean O. Hi from you and hi to you as well. Greetings, Bill and Ben. It's raining in the inner west. Good to know. Not raining where I am, but definitely chilly. We are right in the thick of it, wintertime where I am. Kristen is here saying hi to everyone on this wet, rainy afternoon in Sydney. Hey, Alan. Hey, Jan. Happy Friday to you. Dr. Nicole Johnston is here from LinkedIn, tuning in from LinkedIn, saying good afternoon. Hello to you too. Lovely to have you all here with me today. We've got lots to cover. Sometimes I sit down on a Friday and think, oh, Friday Live, what are we going to talk about this week? And I am never left with an hour of dead air. As you know, there is always plenty to talk about. And we've ended up with a pretty packed agenda here today. I'm going to talk about a couple of sad, tragic news stories that have come to my attention about happenings over the last 24 hours. And then I'm going to do a bit of a deep dive, a little unexpectedly so, but I think this is a topic that so many of you will take some good stuff away from: access to books and records. How do we get that access? What should we be expecting to find when we get that access? And if we can't, as owners, get access to our buildings, books and records, can't get any of them, can't get some of them, what are the options that are available to get that access? What's the next step that can be taken? And for those of you who are already a bit familiar with that process, and you know that the tribunal is really the next step, I'm going to explain why some people, some of you maybe, have not had the success that you expected to have in the tribunal when you're making this kind of application for an order for access to your owner's corporation's books and records. So we're definitely going to get into that. I want to leave a bit of time for that one because I have a feeling there might be a few questions, a few examples you might want to share with me, and I'm happy to get stuck into that. Dr. Nick is telling me it's a beautiful sunny day on the Gold Coast today. Indeed, we will be there in just 6 weeks, I think it is. Dr. Nicole at your Strata Impact Conference. I do want to make sure everybody's remembered. I posted this on the page as well earlier this week. Today's the last day to get your early bird discounted tickets to Dr. Nicole's Strata Impact Conference. So team Rochelle and Mina, who are here with me in the background, I believe we have a link to remind everyone, if you're not registered for the conference and you want to join Nicole and me and so many other awesome Strata people at the Langham on the Gold Coast on the 1st and 2nd of August. Do go and check out all the details for the Strata Impact Conference and jump in today and get that early bird pricing. We'll get the rego link into the comments here for you. I think I see it coming on in now. I think Dr. Nicole has just released the full program as well for that conference. So if you're wondering who's speaking, what are they talking about? Is this really going to be relevant to me? I know on Nicole's LinkedIn profile, there is the detailed program there, and that might be on the website or accessible through the website as well. Dr. Nick is here filling us in. Oh, we're extending early bird. Awesome. Early bird now 28 June so that everyone gets the opportunity. Awesome. Okay, great to know. Thank you, Dr. Nick. 28 June to grab that early bird pricing for the Strata Impact Conference. Very generous of you. I know that it's already, so many people have already told me that they're attending, so looking forward to catching up with them. Kareem is here. Hi, Amanda. I hear this week's podcast episode is the winner. As they all are, of course. We are definitely going to talk about this week's podcast episode, Kareem. Thank you for being here and reminding me what an excellent podcast episode it was. Hey, Leonie, I see you there. That's everyone. I think I've done the rounds. If you are coming in, I see more eyes there and you want to say hi, you are always welcome to do that. Yeah, let's talk about the podcast, episode number 412 this week. It went out yesterday, so you may not have had a chance to catch it yet. But I'm going to say it was inspired by an article that was in the Sydney Morning Herald earlier this week, and somebody, not quite sure who it was, had posted it on LinkedIn, and there were some Strata people commenting on this article, and it was telling us about our New South Wales Premier Chris Minns' plan to host a competition and have some creative people, architects and designers, draw up their new modern designs for low to medium density living. And the examples that were given were terrace style housing, low to medium density apartments as well. And the idea is that there'll be a design book that the government will essentially approve to be able to fast track development of these types of complexes. And the article in the Sydney Morning Herald was all about the history of Sydney terrace houses, and the commentary that was happening over on LinkedIn from some Strata people was, yeah, wouldn't it be great to have some non-Strata title development where we can still have that higher density, but it's not a freestanding house, but it's not a Strata title, because with Strata title comes all sorts of complex legal obligations. Not sure if it's possible to have a system where you have some multi-owned property, let's say, and it not be Strata title. Yes, I know we have company title. I'm not sure that we're going to see a return to that anytime soon. But really interesting discussion. And it reminded me of my chat here on live with Kareem Tawansi in December last year. And Kareem opened that chat by saying, love living in Sydney, love living in the inner city, and Sydney, a bit like Melbourne, lots of gorgeous old terrace houses. And the best thing about living in a terrace house, says Kareem, is looking at the outside. They look great, but they're not all that practical. Not a lot of light, not a lot of space, constantly running up and down stairs. I have never lived in a terrace house, but I've had a couple of friends who have. And I can tell you, yeah, when I've been in them, I've said, no, not for me. No, thank you. So Kareem chose to have the best of both worlds, to stay living in the inner city, but to live in an apartment. And you can hear all about Kareem's journey, what he learned about the realities of apartment living, what he now shares with the communities that he leads in this week's podcast episode. And you might have remembered that chat from live here last year, but you can go back and revisit those nuggets, those pieces of gold that Kareem just drops throughout that conversation. I've listened to it a couple of times now, and it really is very valuable to have somebody like Kareem who has successfully led his communities through some tough times, through some good times. When we spoke, Kareem was coming out of a general meeting where one of his communities had approved a $2.7 million improvement project. So not just repair work, which I know is hard enough to get across the line, but an improvement and an upgrade project. So I imagine something of that size is probably ongoing, Kareem. I didn't check in and get an update from you about how that was tracking along, but we might need to do that sometime in the near future. Cassie's here. Hey, Cassie, saying, loved your recent podcast on this topic. Thank you very much, Cassie. And thank you, Kareem, for sharing so generously. Sean is saying, I would like to hear Professor Kathy Sherry's comment about multi-owned properties that are not strata title. Yeah, so Sean, I don't know if you heard, I've given you a bit of a summary of the podcast episode here, but when you listen to the podcast episode, you get a bit more detail in the intro about these comments on LinkedIn, specifically from Professor Kathy Sherry, about strata title and the problems that it rains upon us and whether there is another solution. And the short answer, Sean, if you are connected with Kathy on LinkedIn, even if you're not, I think you should be able to search her profile and you can read her comments on other posts. But you can go and check out that comment, which I think was on Monday or Tuesday this week. But the short answer is she doesn't really have a solution to the problem, but she is, as she regularly does, calling on planners and government and the clever people who decide how our cities are going to be mapped out to be thinking a bit more creatively about how we can avoid the legal complexities that inevitably come about when we are sharing land, as we do in strata. Once you've got a common driveway, once you have shared space, shared services, then you inevitably have to encounter strata and all of those complexities. So Kathy always challenging us to try and think outside the box. Sean B is here giving us a wave. Daryl, hey, you might have just come in and missed my hats off to your 45 meetings as you outed yourself in our earlier post this week. I hope you're okay. I thought you were at a meeting. That's why you weren't here. Maybe that's why you're late. That's this week's podcast episode. Keep on coming in and give me those hellos. Some sad news these past 24 hours. A man is dead and a woman rushed to hospital after an intense fire at a unit complex in Brisbane's northeast yesterday. News is telling us that this was a 2-story unit block. That's how the media describes it. We're told that it was engulfed in flames. Neighbours who were on the scene found a woman who had escaped the building calling for help. She was badly burned. She's in hospital. She said that she had been asleep when the fire took hold and she woke up to flames surrounding her. Another man in the building died, and it has been reported that he was an older man who was blind and deaf. Same day, yesterday, a 25-year-old man and a police officer were praised as heroes after saving an elderly woman from a unit fire in Adelaide. Emergency services were called to the building and saw flames coming out of a unit, and were told that inside 90-year-old Lorraine was at the front door, but she wasn't able to get out because she has mobility issues. Local residents were saying that she had been on the floor inside, but had managed to crawl on her hands and knees to the front door and unlock the door. Her 25-year-old neighbour, Matt, is then believed to have rushed inside the burning home to save her. There are reports that there was no working smoke alarm inside that Adelaide unit. If you're reading reports about the Brisbane fire, you'll hear that the woman who was badly injured is saying that she was asleep and she woke up to flames surrounding her. So I can only assume that there was no working smoke alarm inside that unit either. Now, inside today's email, this afternoon's email, letting you know about today's chat, I was saying that reading these articles reminded me immediately, came to mind the research that the Owners Corporation Network carried out towards the end of last year. They were doing a survey about emergency preparedness in our strata schemes, and the results from that research were published earlier this year. In a podcast chat, it was episode number 387, I spoke to Megan Chatterton of the OCN and Leanne Habib, strata manager, and they were letting me know what the preliminary findings from that survey was. And in essence, they revealed just how unprepared our buildings are for emergency events, even though these events seem to be increasing. When I am having a look at these news articles and I go and look at a few different news sites to see different versions of the story, have I got the real story? Have I got the whole story? Google inevitably delivers up other news stories about fires in unit blocks, and these do seem to be on the increase. And we've talked before, and many of you are concerned about fires from e-bikes and e-scooters as well. And wherever somebody is seriously injured or killed from a unit fire, then I think it's important that we are talking about this and we are reminding ourselves, our neighbours, our committees, our strata managers about the need to make sure that we are ready. For a lot of us, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So you can head back, have a listen to that podcast chat with Megan and Leanne. There are a number of tips, resources referred to in that chat. I was also reminded about episode number 367, which was another conversation with Dr. Nicole Johnston, who was sharing her research at that time into passive fire systems in our residential strata buildings, and sharing with us that there are apparently, according to her research, thousands of fire safety defects that just go unnoticed in strata, with owners often unknowingly jeopardizing their own safety and their building safety simply by doing renovation works and penetrating firewalls that they shouldn't otherwise be touching. So that's episode number 367. Have a listen to that one. In reading these articles and knowing I was coming here to chat with you today, I just penned some tips, some recommendations, some discussion points, some thinking points for you to come back to maybe put on the agenda of your next committee meetings, to raise with your strata manager, to raise with your committee, to say, hey, are we doing this? Are we thinking about this? 5 things for apartment residents to do to ensure, to improve their safety, to help avoid this risk of tragedy and disaster. So, first of all, do you know the location of the nearest emergency exit? If you're sitting there now in your apartment, you're thinking about that front door and you're thinking about the hallway, you're thinking about the corridor. I'm doing it as I think about my apartment. Where is the nearest emergency exit? Is that exit light working? If you had visitors, if you had a new tenant on your floor, and if the power went out and there were no lights, would they know where to go? Are these exits properly marked? That's number 1. Number 2, keep a contact list of elderly and vulnerable people. These 2 examples from yesterday, one in Brisbane, one in Adelaide. A man who reportedly was deaf and blind, and a 90-year-old woman These are our elderly and vulnerable people with disabilities. Do we know who they are in the building? Do we know what unit they're in? What level are they on, so that they can be prioritized in the event of an evacuation? And when I was writing out these notes, I thought, and pets, and we need to know who's got pets. Have we got the pets out? Have we rescued our furry friends? Do we need to know where they are and make sure that they're accounted for too? They are also vulnerable in our communities. Number 3, ensure that all fire safety equipment is operational, that it is compliant, that it is up to date, that it is regularly serviced. We should all be doing our annual fire safety statements to the extent that you're in a building that's required to do that each year, and provide that annual fire safety statement to your local council. You want to make sure that you've done that it's up to date. It was only this week I was talking to a member inside our online community. We were having a member call, and she was telling me, on our building's notice board, I walked past the other day and it caught my eye, annual fire safety statement, heard you talking about that, went to have a look, and it was from 2022. And I thought, it's now 2024, gave the Strata manager a ring, and it turned out that the last year's annual fire safety statement had not been completed. Yes, there had been a fine from the council, and the committee was dragging its feet in terms of rectifying the problems with the fire safety devices around the building in order to get that certificate finally signed off. And it included things like fire extinguishers were out of date. They have an expiry date. That was picked up. I know a lot of buildings are going through this process of defects, we'll call them, that haven't previously been picked up in earlier years, are now being picked up by fire safety professionals, because those professionals, at least in New South Wales, are now accredited, now have to reach more rigorous standards, tick more boxes, and they're paying a bit more attention. Anyone who is on a Strata committee or use Strata managers will know we're having to answer these questions from owners saying, well, if the fire extinguishers were okay last year, how come they're not okay this year? Well, the law has become, thankfully, more stringent, and our fire safety professionals are complying with those requirements. So if you've been hit with a bill to get these things upgraded, please do it. You don't want to be the next ones in the media. Number 4, in my 5 things that you can be doing to help improve the safety of your building, implement an emergency response plan. This is what the Owners Corporation Network was talking about coming out of that research. The results of their survey essentially were they were hearing from committee members, hearing from owners that we just don't have time for this. We need support for this. We need support from government. We don't have to do it, so we don't do it. An emergency response plan is going to include your evacuation routes, the location of all the important services, including water and electrical, is becoming more and more important now, especially those of you who have residents with electric vehicles and they have EV charging stations. We need to know where they are. How do we turn those off quickly? Your emergency contact list that I've spoken about. And in your emergency response plan, you're probably going to have once a year, twice a year, you're going to practice what happens if there is a fire. Do we have a fire drill? These are things that you'll know if you work in an office building. You do. You have drills. You have the fire warden on your floor because you have to, because that's the law when we have a workplace, not the law for a residential apartment building. And I think there might be a bit of a gap there. As Dr. Nicole said on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, most people don't follow the law in Strata. This is a really scary example of this isn't even the law to have an emergency response plan. And it is indeed, from the Owners Corporation Network's research, the minority of buildings who have one of these in place. I am going to hit you up with my 5th of my 5 recommendations here. Before I do that, Dr. Nicole's saying there's interesting research out of the UK that might be of interest to your listeners, Amanda, and she's given us a link there as well. Group processes in emergency evacuations, it looks like. Awesome. Thank you for that, Nicole. We will check that one out. Cassie's saying thank you for mentioning pets. Yes, my pleasure. Sean saying new fire doors after 11 years of passing inspections. Yeah, it's a bit scary. It's a bit scary, isn't it? So that just shows you how in need this law was of change. I mean, you fire guys might need to get our fire guides back on the show again to have a chat. You'll tell me if you think all of this is unnecessary. I haven't heard that yet. And I've certainly seen some things signed off in the past in buildings that just shouldn't have been. So I'm hoping that we all agree that these are necessary changes. And Sean, if your building's got new fire doors, that those are welcomed and needed. Sean O is saying many committees are extremely slow in approving defect quotes after AFSS inspections. This is causing many AFSS to be lodged late, and owners' corporations are incurring fines. Yeah, because they don't want to do it. Don't want to spend money on it. It's expensive. It wasn't budgeted for. That's a really good point, strata managers. I know in my building, it happened to us last year. We got a big bill for having to deal with a lot of upgrades, and there was no budget for that because we didn't expect it. And you don't want to pay for things full stop, but you certainly don't want to pay for things when it might be coming out of that fund that you're setting aside for an improvement project down the track, or we're saving to replace the lift in a couple of years. We're going to have to take from that fund. So it might be a good idea, committees, managers, to start setting aside this money, knowing that whatever comes back when that inspection is done, it's going to mean spend for the community. Sean M is saying, I convinced a committee of the need for 20K of doors. Yeah. Don't want to be that building on the news. That's what I think about. Number 5, make sure the building is adequately insured. Now, we know, we've talked about it, we've felt it, we're experiencing it firsthand. Escalations in construction costs mean that it is probably likely that your building is underinsured if it hasn't been valued within the last 12 months. Rena and I have talked about it on the podcast, Strata Community Insurance. Rena attended one of their forums and they were saying that they're now recommending valuations every 12 months and telling their strata managers to advise your committees, get a building valuation for insurance purposes every 12 months. Rule of thumb was otherwise, in New South Wales at least, where we don't have a legal requirement to get this done at any particular time. Rule of thumb was every 3 years. Now we're talking every 12 months, because just with the passage of the last couple of years, it is probably much more expensive to repair, to reinstate, to rebuild your strata building than it ever has been before, and than you expect. So those are my 5 tips, 5 things that you can be thinking about now to help improve your safety, the safety of your neighbors, the safety of your building generally. Know the location of your emergency exits and make sure that they are marked, those signs are working. Keep a contact list of elderly and vulnerable people, including people with disabilities who can be prioritized in the event of an evacuation. Put your pets on that list as well. Make sure you know where they are in the building. Ensure all fire safety equipment is operational and regularly serviced. Get those annual fire safety statements signed off and lodged. Implement an emergency response plan and make sure the building is adequately insured. So they're just 5 things that I jotted down after reading those articles today and knowing that I was popping in to have a chat to you. Moving along to the main event. Books and records. Owners Corporation documents, files, information. Many of you, I know because you tell me, because you post it here on this page, because you write to me and put it in my inbox, you post it in our member forum. You want access to your books and records. They are indeed yours. You are a member of the Owners Corporation. You are a part owner in this big lump that is your building, that is the common property. And these records are yours to access. Our legislation, certainly in New South Wales, very similar across the country, tells us that owners or anyone who is authorised by an owner is entitled to access and inspect the owners' corporation's books and records. A few variations on that theme across the country. I'm going to be focusing on and talking about New South Wales legislation today. So you're commonly telling me that you want access to records. You're also commonly complaining that you can't get access to records, that you've asked for access, that you have been given access, but what you were hoping to find in the records is not there, that the records are incomplete, that they are inaccurate, that the material that should have been produced for your inspection is not there. And you ask me, what do I do about that? How do I get these records? So that's what we're going to talk about in a little bit of detail this afternoon. And I'm raising it because I'm generally guided by, as I said, what you're posting on the page, what's in my inbox, what our members are talking about in the forum. And it does seem to me, it's always been a question, it's always been an issue, but it seems to be coming up more often. And I wonder if that's because our strata committees are dealing with big problems, hard decisions, having to coordinate, having to be responsible for multi-million-dollar works projects, remedial works projects. People, human beings, are busier than they have ever been before. And I think sometimes our committees make the mistake of thinking that less information, giving less information is better because it prevents people from asking questions, or the less people know, the quieter they'll be. Keep them in the dark. They won't bother us. They'll let us get on with our job. They've elected us, and therefore we should be able to run this show without being questioned. I think there's a little bit of that attitude out there, and that could be why more owners than ever before are feeling there's a lack of transparency, feeling the need to get themselves informed, to get themselves in the loop. Certainly owners are paying more for their properties, investing a significant amount of money when buying a strata apartment these days. So wanting to understand what is going on, even when you're not on the committee, is understandable, indeed a laudable goal. And that is what I encourage people to do, to get informed. Our strata managers are definitely busier than they've ever been before. Maybe 20 years ago, when I first started out, 20 years ago, you could ring up a strata manager and ask for a document and they'd happily flick it over to you. That is just not the case anymore. Our strata managers do not have time to be responding to individual owner requests. And I think there's concerns, rightly so, about liability, about responsibility. The strata manager wants to get their actions signed off by the committee before they take certain steps. And it is indeed open to and proper for the strata manager to be directing owners to make an appointment to inspect the records if you want access. I know that there are online portals that a lot of management companies operate, and they have a system which is great, where owners can log into a website. Owners, without asking, simply because they're an owner and they've got an email and a password, they can log into a website and they can see some documents, some common documents, some regularly requested documents. Maybe it's the recent financials for the community. Maybe it's the minutes of the last few years' meetings. Maybe it's a contact list for emergency trades, their own levy statement, how much they owe, kind of simple stuff like that. And many of you are telling me I certainly have that access through my strata manager's website. Many of you tell me that you have that access, but you're disappointed that you don't have more than that and can't see more than that without making this appointment to inspect the records, which is indeed what our New South Wales legislation requires. Section 182 of the Strata Schemes Management Act is the relevant section to have a look at if you do want access to records and you want access to more than what you are able to just log in and access via the strata manager's online portal. That section we're going to post here into the comments for you if you want to go over and have a look at it. Before I continue, I'm going to dip into those comments which have been coming thick and fast since I started talking about this topic. Lee is saying, we would like to offer them back to the owner's corporation. They don't want to pick them up. Must I store them? So Lee, this is a building where you're the strata manager. You have your appointment has expired, come to an end, and you're no longer the manager. What do I do with the records? Yeah, they won't pick them up. You got to drop them off. I'd be getting those out of the office. The secretary is the appropriate person to deliver records to if they haven't. I'm assuming they haven't appointed another manager. Otherwise, you would have heard from that manager to transfer the records over. If they haven't appointed another manager, then drop them off to the secretary. If you know who that person is, contact them. Where would you like me to send them? Otherwise, drop them to the building. The building is the address for service of the property. If they haven't otherwise nominated another address with land registry services, put them in boxes and leave them at the building. Probably not a good idea to hang on to them indefinitely. You don't want fire to break out in your office and you to be responsible for those. Jan is saying, sigh, that would be me. Super frustrated about this. Thanks for talking about this, Amanda. My pleasure, Jan. Daryl is saying, in our experience, a lot of people complaining about access to records are upset that the strata manager isn't prepared to stop everything they're doing to filter through years of details to find the records for them. 75% of requests to ask for information are withdrawn once they realize they have to do it themselves. Oh, that's really fascinating, Daryl. I get it, and I hear you, and I have owners who say to me, Amanda, I asked the strata manager and they didn't give it to me. What terrible service. And I'm very quick to defend you guys. I am quick because I get it. If you had your hundreds and hundreds, in some cases probably thousands, of owners contacting you, expecting you to dip into the archives and pull out documents and email them to you, then that's all you do. That would be a full-time job. This framework, this process for booking an inspection, Section 182, go and have a look at it, is there for a reason. And it's so that there can be this streamlined way of owners getting reasonable access, proper access, the access that they're entitled to their records. I think we do need that process in place because I don't think you can expect strata managers to drop everything and deliver up on request. Cassie saying, agreed. Records are incomplete regarding defects, reports, court proceedings. Yeah, interesting, Cassie. I'm going to get into that in a moment. Sydney resident is saying one issue is the massive difference in the search capabilities of various strata management systems. It would appear that some platforms used by even the largest companies have extremely limited and antiquated search capabilities, something to assess when comparing providers. Stephen, thank you very much, Stephen. Yeah, great question. Indeed, it's a good one for committees who are shopping around for a new strata manager. Can we have a look at your system? Can we see how you keep your records, what system you use? How easy is that for us and for our owners to search through and our lawyers to search through? I agree with you completely, Stephen. I have this frustration regularly. Often when I'm first working with a new client, I'll say to them, all right, heard all that, hear what you're suffering, got it, I'm on board. I suggest the next thing that you do is an inspection of the books and records, because there may be some documents in there that will fill in some gaps. There may not be documents in there. And then that's something else that we might need to talk about. And it's often me who is authorized, because in New South Wales, an owner can authorize someone else, anyone, strata lawyer, real estate agent, auntie, son, daughter, as long as that person is authorized by the owner, and that means a written, signed authority. If that person is authorized, then they can carry out an inspection. So I'm regularly logging in to clunky systems, to systems that sometimes I get to see records for other buildings as well, mistakenly filed often. And yes, search functions do differ in their capabilities and efficiencies. Stephen, I agree with you. Lee's saying, I've been the manager for 20 years. The minute books need to be stored with us. We have not been replaced. We would like the minute books not in our storeroom. Oh, so you're still the manager. All right. Well, that's something to talk to your client about, because probably under your agency agreement, you are the custodian of the records. You are probably charged with the task of keeping those records. You are right. You should have minute books kept They shouldn't be discarded. It's a conversation to have with your client there, Lee. As a lawyer, I often found that I could tell a client, look, I can keep your files and I can keep them we're required to keep them for up to 7 years. Other things like original wills and original deeds, we need to put in a safe and we keep in safe custody, but we charge for that. And if we charge for that and a client doesn't want to pay that charge, then the client turns up and gets their original records and says, thank you very much. So have a look at your agency agreement and see if there is a charge there that should be being passed on, so that if you're having to pay for extra storage, then you're storing the files of your client. They can have the option to either pay for that or come and pick them up. All right, I'm going to keep moving along. I can see there's more comments there, but I will keep moving along. So I've told you that Section 182, you need to make a proper request to inspect the records. What is a proper request? Well, I suggest that it is a request that refers to Section 182 of the Strata Schemes Management Act. The members in our online community will know that I have a template request that meets the requirements of Section 182, and many of you have told me that you have relied on that letter, that template letter, to fill it in and send it to your Strata manager to get access to the records. Have a close look at 182 and what needs to be included in this request, because I have been involved in a tribunal case where many, many years ago, I was acting for an owners corporation, and they had a lot owner who was making regular requests for inspection. There's no limit. Owners can make regular requests for inspection if they want to. But this committee had determined that this was all getting a bit too much, too expensive for the Strata manager to facilitate, and came to me and asked a series of questions. Do we need to comply with these requests? What do we need to provide? And in looking at the requests that were being made, in some respects, they weren't compliant requests. In particular, there is an argument that there is a fee that needs to be paid prior to the inspection of the records. That is a statutory fee. It's a fee that's set under the legislation in New South Wales. It's about $34 for an hour. And our legislation in New South Wales is a little bit unclear. It says you've got to pay the fee beforehand, but you don't really know how long you're going to be inspecting the records. So do you pay for 1 hour? Do you pay for 2 hours? And we were able to use that loophole to deny some of the inspection requests by the owner because there was no payment or there was no offer of payment. So actually, I do have the wording in front of me. I'll pull it up for you because I believe it is, yes, Section 182, the request must be made by written notice given to the owners corporation and be accompanied by the fee. Has to be accompanied by the fee, right? So when I am writing these requests for clients, or as we have in our member template, we have a line that says, happy to pay the fee before the inspection. Please send me an invoice. Please let me know who to make the check out to, for anyone who's still writing checks, what account to deposit it to. We make sure that we address this question of the fee so that the request cannot be deemed invalid because it was not accompanied by the fee. So have a close look at 182. Make sure you're making a proper request. The other thing that is in 182 is the list of items that are to be made available for inspection. Now, I did training for real estate agents and property managers a couple of months ago for the Real Estate Institute, and I showed them this section, 182, and said this kind of thing should be printed out by anybody who's going to do a records inspection, especially a purchaser or a purchaser's agent, because this is your list of what you should be looking for. Some owners tell me, Amanda, I don't know what's there because I don't know what's supposed to be there. Section 182, subsection 3, has a really great list of what is supposed to be there. And helpfully, it has a subsection in there that says the records that are to be produced for inspection include any record or document in the custody or under the control of the owners corporation. So I say that means everything that the Strata manager has for this building. That is a document under the custody or control of the owner's corporation. Every record, yes, it includes emails. Yes, it includes the complete Strata roll with owner's contact details on it. Every record under the custody or control of the owner's corporation. That is in section 182. So it's not surprising when I teach and I expect, and I tell you to expect, that when you make these inspections and you log in, there should be thousands of documents for a well-established building. There should be thousands of documents there for your inspection. Not surprising, there isn't. So what do you do when things are missing? When you're looking for something in particular, it is not there. You expected to go and read through a year's worth of emails between the strata manager and the committee. Those emails are not there for your inspection. What should you do? Well, this is what I do and what I tell my clients to do. Step number one, you write to the strata manager, or if this is a self-managed building and it's the secretary who has made the documents available for inspection, write to the secretary and set out what is missing. There was no strata roll. There were no emails for the period 1 June 2022 to 30 July 2023. There was no copy of the legal advice that the owner's corporation was given in relation to Lot 4's NCAT claim. And you're not Lot 4, so it's not privileged. It's only privileged if you are the owner's corporation's opponent. The advice that was given by so-and-so lawyers about Lot 4's NCAT claim, that wasn't there. List, very clearly, numbered list. These are the items that were not made available for my inspection. Please provide the missing items or let me know the new date and time for a further inspection, confirming that these documents will be made available. So super clear, you've got to write that, follow up. Don't do it in a phone call. As a lawyer, I'm always thinking about what's the next step, then the next step, then the next step. Ultimately, you might decide that you need to go to the tribunal and get an order. You want to lay this paper trail. You want to lay this paper trail before the tribunal to say, these are all the attempts that I made to get access to these records. So send that email, be super clear. It's an itemized list. If you can narrow it down to a period, for example, I'm only interested in the email correspondence from the last 6 months, then only ask for the email correspondence from the last 6 months. Don't get crazy about it. Okay, we don't really, do you really want every email for the last 25 years since the advent of email? Probably not. You probably just want to know what's been happening recently. And that's certainly a practice that I make sure to put in place, that I'm very clear about the period of time for the documents that I'm seeking. So put that out in your letter. Still don't get what you want? Maybe there's a couple of emails, maybe there's a couple of follow-ups. Ultimately, you decide, I've tried it this way, it's not happening, I'm not getting the records that I know exist, that I want to inspect. I'm going to go to the tribunal and get an order. Section 188 in the Strata Schemes Management Act is the section that says the tribunal can make an order giving an owner access to records if the tribunal finds that the records have been wrongfully withheld. Wrongfully withheld. I'm going to say that a few times today. If the records have been wrongfully withheld and if the tribunal finds that they have been wrongfully withheld, you got to prove it. You're the applicant. You have to prove the records have been wrongfully withheld. Then the tribunal can make an order giving you access. There is no mediation required before you make one of these applications. Yeah, that's one of the exempt topics. Don't have to apply for mediation. You can go straight to the tribunal and seek a Section 188 order, but don't do it unless you've made the appointment under 182 to inspect, you've carried out the inspection, you know things are missing, you've asked for those things to be produced. And I'm going to get into this in a little more detail. And you know those things exist. You know there are documents that exist and that they haven't been produced. Then you might want to be thinking about a Section 188 order. Now, I know a few owners who have had success seeking these orders. I know many owners who have not had success seeking these orders. And a few of you have come to me and said, Amanda, I don't know why. I don't know why. I thought this was black and white. No documents. I'm an owner. I want documents. I should be able to get them. Why was I not successful? And there's a few mistakes that I see that are made with these applications by owners. First of all, the tribunal doesn't have the power to require an owner's corporation or a strata manager to produce a record that doesn't exist. And I know this is often the response that owners corporations give to these applications. Right or wrong, the response is it's not there because it doesn't exist. And I said earlier, you're the applicant. You have to prove your case. Part of proving that a document has been wrongfully withheld is, in my view, proving that it exists. That means that you've seen it somewhere else. You've seen it referred to in another piece of correspondence. We know that there is a report about the waterproofing from 2022 because it's referred to in the minutes of the meeting. Where is that report? That report must exist. It's referred to here. It has been wrongfully withheld. You've got to do the hard work of proving that the document exists because it is easy and it is an acceptable response for an owner's corporation or a strata manager to say it doesn't exist. So I see these applications fail and I see the reasons that the tribunal gives. I can't make a 188 order because the document doesn't exist. It can't be wrongfully withheld if it doesn't exist. The other thing that I see owners asking for with these 188 orders is an order that the owner's corporation corrects errors in documents. And a good example here is the strata roll. An owner's corporation might say, well, the strata roll should have an owner might say the strata roll should have all this information in it, and it doesn't. So information is being wrongfully withheld. That could be characterized as an error in a document. And just because a document is not correct, doesn't have the right information in it, does not mean that it has been wrongfully withheld. So just be careful that you're not asking the tribunal to make an order that the owner's corporation correct errors in its documents. You are actually proving that a document exists, that it has been wrongfully withheld, and that what you want is that document. And by the way, I hope it goes without saying, but it is very important when you're making this application, be very clear, have a list. What documents are you seeking? It's not, I made an appointment on this day and I logged in and I had a look and there was some stuff there, but other stuff was not there. I want the other stuff. Not going to cut it. You have to be really, really clear about exactly what documents are missing. What documents do you say have been wrongfully withheld? How do you prove that they exist? And be very clear that those are the documents that you want the tribunal to order the production of. I have seen some owners in their applications for these orders have a long list of complaints about how the strata manager dealt with their request. They may say the strata manager was rude. The strata manager took 2 weeks when they should have taken no more than 10 days. The strata manager made me travel. The strata manager only gave me an hour. None of those complaints are going to be relevant to an application for an order that documents have been wrongfully withheld. It is not for the tribunal to make determinations about whether you were treated with courtesy by the strata manager or not. And making those kinds of complaints in these types of applications are not going to get them very far. Some owners will say, I asked for documents and then I was flooded with mountains and mountains of documents. I was given a USB. This is a common one. I was given a USB and it just had 20 years of history on there and I couldn't search through it all. The fact that you were given an excessive amount of documents is not a basis for a Section 118 order either. The tribunal will not find that the owner's corporation has wrongfully withheld documents if it has given you too many documents for you to make sense of. I know there's a lot of comments over there. I have a bit of trepidation about jumping into them, but I'm going to give it a go. Nathan's saying semantic search is a game changer. We've added this to our platform, and combined with AI functionality, it makes pulling up records so much easier. Oh, excellent. Nathan's commenting from LinkedIn, so we might go and have a look at Nathan and what software you're providing there. Absolutely, with AI, these searches should be so much easier, and I'm pleased to see that someone's on top of that. Chu is saying our committee deliberately not uploading records, not even AGM minutes were there onto the portal. Only invoices and work orders were uploaded. Yeah, so Chu, I hope you were tuning in earlier when I said there's a difference between the portal and the owners corporation's books and records. So the Strata Managers portal, where they might have just those, sorry, I have an 11-year-old singing in the room next door. They might just have those basic documents, the financials, the minutes of the last AGM. I don't know if you can hear that. But if you want to do a Section 182 records inspection, make that request under Section 182, and you should be provided with all records under the custody or control of the owners corporation. Anna doesn't even have access to the portal. She's on the committee. However, the Strata manager seems to be looking after it. Okay. Hopefully that's good. Oh, Sean's saying get them to pay to have them digitized. Yeah, that's great advice for Lee. I think Sean saying if Lee's got boxes and boxes of documents, yeah, get them digitized. Good one. That's Strata manager thinking. Josephine saying records should be on the portal. Leonie has previously paid for 4 Strata searches and received only half of what is on the list required. Yep. Oh, I've just lost your comment there, Leonie. Even with an NCAT order, you didn't receive them. So this is where we learn. And I've learned these things from seeing owners who have not been successful with their Section 188 orders. The tribunal usually gives them detailed reasons for why it has made the decision that it has made. And I think with these records inspections, the tribunal, with these requests for orders about records and records inspection, the tribunal tries hard to explain why the order is not made. Because you do I know owners do go in thinking it's black and white, don't have the record, I'm going to get the order. Not the case. So Leonie, if you're saying, you're saying even with an NCAT order, you didn't receive them. Right. Sorry to hear that. But with NCAT orders, with an NCAT dismissal of applications, owners, if you're tuning in who have experienced that, please do have a good read of the reasons why the tribunal may have dismissed the application, because you can have another go round. Have another go round, and next time be attuned to those mistakes and see if you can get it right. Leonie, returning to your with an NCAT order, you didn't receive them, so you would have been open to you to enforce that order and seek a penalty for failure to comply with the order. Alan is saying, is there legislation to have the portal information updated? For example, Strata roll, to avoid a Strata inspection. I've requested our Strata manager the last 2 AGMs to update and still hasn't been done. So there is a requirement that the Strata roll be kept up to date. I'm looking on my other screen because I've got the Act in front of me. So Section 177, an owners corporation must prepare and maintain a Strata roll. The content of the Strata roll has to include the name of the owner of each lot, an address for service of notices. Here is a little tip for you. In Section 178, it says that the Strata roll must include an Australian postal address and an email address if the holder has one, if an email has not otherwise been provided as the address for service. So here's what I say. If the Strata manager has been communicating with an owner by email, then the Strata manager, Owners Corporation, has an email address for that owner. Therefore, the email address must go on the Strata roll, pursuant to Section 178, even if the email address is not the address for service, because 178 says if the owner has an email address, then it must go on the Strata roll, even if it's not the address for service. And I have had success with this in the past where an owner has said, I've got the Strata roll, Amanda, but there's no email addresses on it. And I've said, well, 178, there's supposed to be email addresses on it, but hang on, let me prove, first of all, that the owner has an email address and has communicated with the Strata manager via that email address. So the Strata manager must know they have an email address, must put it on the Strata roll. So what we did was find emails that other owners had sent to the strata manager. Owner of lot 3 emailed the strata manager on this date. Here's a copy of it. So they obviously have an email address. That email address should be on the strata roll. Wrote that to the strata manager. Within days, we got the strata roll with all the email addresses. So the email addresses had been redacted. They'd been pulled off the strata roll because they didn't want this owner to have access to those email addresses. But 178 says email addresses must be on the strata roll. Strata roll must be produced for inspection. That's in section 182. So you can refer to that 178 to get those email addresses on the strata roll. Sideways answer to your question, Alan. Yes, strata roll needs to be kept up to date with all of with all of that information. Joseph is saying, really? All the emails? Yep, all the emails. The strata manager has emails, then they need to be produced for inspection. So be careful what you're writing to your strata manager. If you are writing an email to your strata manager or copying your strata manager on something, it is forming part of the books and records and may be produced for inspection. Scrolling through these comments, I'm not going to get to all of them. Maureen saying, not sure why records are kept a secret from owners and that you have to pay to access them. It's a good point, Maureen. If we had sophisticated tech, why can't owners just log in and access everything at any time? Why do they have to pay to access? Especially when it's a bit old-fashioned, isn't it? You make an appointment to inspect. There's a fee because it takes up time and office space. The strata manager has to set up a little nook for you. That was 20, 15 years ago. Bit different now. Why can't you just have in the same way you have access to the portal, have access to everything? Yeah, good point. Bill and Ben saying, can't wrongfully withhold that which does not exist. Incomplete records, what a luxury. Josephine saying, wouldn't quotes be commercial and in confidence? Not necessarily. If it was a tender process, then there would need to be parameters around how that tender process was conducted to make sure that, yes, those quotes weren't disclosed to competitors. But they're certainly not confidential as between owners. They might be confidential as between the contractors, but not as between owners. That question comes up often with legal advice and legal advice privilege. And if my neighbour's the one in dispute, they can't access the records, but I can access the records, make a copy and give it to them. That's when you might need to start thinking about confidentiality agreements and things like that. It's some steps that I've had to go through previously to make sure that someone inspecting the records doesn't then go and share that privileged information with somebody else. Cassie's saying you're doing a great job, Amanda, in bringing transparency to this section. Good to hear. Thank you, Cassie. I can see from these comments that it is a complicated one and we are going to run out of time. Leonie's saying, yes, a USB that you can't open the files. That's the other thing, isn't it? Was it Stephen, if you're still there, the different platforms that are being used and different file types that don't work on other platforms? Oh my goodness, what a headache. Carolyn saying, I have been advised that if the email address is not on the Section 22 notice, it does not need to go on the strata roll, as the information for the strata roll comes from the Section 22 notice. Not true. Have a look at Section 178. I have a template letter for this, which members, you will know you have access to. And COSI is the username forum, the forum username, just posted, I think, this afternoon. And I know that's not COSI's real name, so it's okay for me to reveal that, because he said, Amanda, I used your letter and it worked a charm. I've got the email addresses. I've got the complete strata roll. Thank you so much. So Section 178, it's 178 subsection 1C. An email address, if the holder has one, if the owner has an email address, it needs to be on the strata roll, even if they haven't submitted that on their Section 22 notice as their address for service. Julie's saying, how long do records need to be kept? 7 years. What documents need to be held indefinitely? So there are different categories for different documents, Julie, under the legislation. And so I'm not going to give you a hard and fast on that. Some are 5 years, some are 7 years, and minutes. Anything that needs to be held indefinitely, it's going to be minutes. You never want to be getting rid of minutes, that's for sure. Okay. I'm going to wrap up there. I've just had a quick scan. I will come back to the remainder of those comments and make sure that I have cast my eye over them. Thank you so much, as always, for playing along. As I expected, this is a topic that concerns a lot of you, that many of you have questions about, maybe we should do a deeper dive. Maybe we should do a webinar on this topic. I've always got my ears open for those areas where I think you need further support. So if that's something that would be of interest to you, record a webinar on books and records, access, how to get access, maybe even for our strata managers, how to be facilitating these requests legally, how to deal with some frustrating requests perhaps, let me know if that sounds good to you and we can pull that one together. Thank you very much for being here. I'm going to leave it at that. Send you out into your Friday evenings. Enjoy your weekends in Strata, and I'll be here catching up with you next time. Bye for now.